Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for videocopilot.net, and welcome to another very exciting tutorial, and this time, I mean it. Other times, I may have said that, but this time, it's the truth. We are creating some bar graphs. We're going to do it in a very clever way, and hopefully it will actually be useful. I'm excited to be back making another tutorial. I was sick for a while, and my wife was sick, and my kids were sick, and my cat was probably sick, and my dog, well, I don't have a dog, but if I did, it probably would have eaten the cat and also got sick. But nevertheless, we are feeling better, passed it along to the neighbors, and now that's their problem. We are going to be moving on. Speaking of moving on, let's take a look at this tutorial and see what we're actually going to be creating. Okay, so here's the idea. We need to create some bar graphs, and we want them to look really good, and we also want to be able to change the information and the animation of the bars. Now, in this case, we're using a 3D render of a bar animation, but if I were doing this in a 3D program, and say I needed to make 10 graphs, that could be very slow because I'd have to change the values for each of the projects, render them out, and this one animation took about 20 minutes. So the more graph animations you're making, the longer it's going to take. So the plan is to use one single 3D render as seen here, and you can see all the bar animations move together. And the idea is to use the one animation to recreate all of the bar graphs inside of After Effects. So if we go to our composition here, we've just got a quick little animation where the camera moves out and then the bar graphs animate. And the cool thing here is all the bars are dynamic. So if I click on, say, bar number 3, and, for example, in 2010, we project, popularity of bar graphs among robots to go down momentarily to, say, 200, and I hit OK, that value goes down, and it's all relative to the maximum value of the bar graph. So let's say that in 2011 the value actually went up to 800. Well, our graph only goes up to 400. So if we come up here, click on the chart controls, go to the effects control, set this to say 1000. And when you update that, all of the bar graphs change relative to that high value. So then we can go to that fourth bar, change the value to 800, and now it's representative of, 8 out of 10 or, 80% essentially. So the very cool thing is you can just go in here, make a few adjustments, and your bar graph animation is all set to go. I'll also point out that you don't need a 3D program. You can actually create just some bar graphs in After Effects with a few gradients, and that will work just the same with all of the expressions and setup. So first of all, let's get started with the bar graph from the 3D animation and walk through the process of setting it up and everything you need to know. Now, real quick, let's talk about setting up the 3D animation to make it easy to isolate each of the bar graphs so that you can have individual values for each one. Now, another interesting idea is to use video of things that could represent bars, and in this case, stacks of pennies, and we could use that as a bar graph. We could isolate each of the columns and then, sort of build values around it. So you can be thinking of creative, clever ways to set this up. You just need to be able to isolate each of the columns individually. Now, in a 3D program, the same idea is there, where here we have, a bar animation, and we want to basically set it to animate from 0 all the way up to 100. Now, I added a little bit of a camera move at the beginning, and it's important that the bars don't move until after the camera stops so that you don't have any frame jumping later on, because essentially we're using time remap, and you want to make sure that the camera stays solid for that animation. Now, as far as setting up the scene, it's not that complicated. We just used a few boxes. We set up some boxes for the information and also a column around the side. Just remember to keep some space on the top for a title or other information, maybe a key that you could put down below. So I've kind of zoomed it out a bit. And then you would just render that off as a sequence and bring it into After Effects. So here we are in After Effects, and I'm going to create a new composition. So Control N, we'll make it 720p, 24 frames per second, and we'll set the duration to 100 frames. I'll hit OK. And make sure you go into the interpret settings and set it to 24 frames per second as well. And we'll bring it out. Now, I'm going to cut off the beginning animation, so I'll just slide it over until it stops right before it starts. So then we just have one animation where it raises all the way up to the top there. Now, to avoid a possible bug later on, right-click on the footage, enable time remapping, and then extend the end of it just over a little bit. And that way, if the high value of the graph is set to 400 and your bar is set to 400, there won't be any overflow and the animation won't wrap around. So anyway, here we have our animation. So we need to isolate each one of these bars. So let's duplicate the footage, and then we'll take the mask tool, and we basically need to isolate each one. So we'll isolate the first one. So I'll select down the middle here, and we'll select everything over here since there's a bit of a shadow that shows up, so might as well just grab it all. And we'll hit F, and we want to feather the mask out just a bit. And another thing, actually, let's take the background here, go to the beginning, right click and choose time freeze frame. And that way we just have a freeze frame of none of the bars on, and that way we can look at the one bar by itself to make sure that it looks proper while it's alone. Because you see here we have a little bit of a sharp mask, so we want to maybe feather it out a little bit more. And the one thing we can do is we can feather it and then add the bar back in. So right here we've kind of lost it, but we can maybe go add that mask, and so we don't actually lose it if we go back up to full resolution. So that looks pretty good, and basically that one bar goes up and we have a shadow. So then we can duplicate that, hide the first one, maybe just delete the masks, and work on the second one. So we'll go in here, just go right down the middle of these basically, and then we'll feather it out. Now just be careful when you're feathering, you don't want to be able to reveal the bar that's next to it. So bring it in so that it disappears. And you just want to make sure that you retain as much of the shadow as possible so that this looks good and it's worth the trouble. And again, if you have any trouble with ghosting, just take another mask and add the bar back in. So just So if you look closely and we shut off the second mask, set it to none, it almost looks a little transparent. But if we switch that to add, we're basically adding that back in since we know that that's an important part. Okay, so I've isolated each of the 4 bar graphs, and you can see that I've retained the shadow on the 4th one, and here's the 3rd one, the 2nd one, and the 1st one. So now we need to pre-compose these individual bar elements. So we'll take the first one. We'll choose Layer, Pre-compose, and we'll call this bar 1. Hit OK, move all attributes. And again, we'll pre-compose the next one, Control-Shift-C. And it's good to name your layers so that you know what's going on. And now we've got our 4 bar animations. Okay, now let's create our dynamic text value. So we'll take the text tool, we'll type 100. This part doesn't really matter because we're going to be updating it, but we do want to make it a 3D layer. And hit the rotate tool, and we want to rotate it, make it look like there's a little bit of perspective, scale it down, and make sure that it's centered so that if the value changes, it will stay in that area, if that's what you want. And maybe rotate it a little bit more here. Okay, then we'll take that value, duplicate it, slide it over. We'll duplicate it again, slide it over one more time. And you can add some other information like the year, and those will be static values, but these are the main ones that are going to be updated and dynamic. And then we'll duplicate it one more time and move it up for our max value. Might even rotate that a little less. Okay, so now we're going to get into the expressions, and that's basically the coding that we're going to be using to link these values together. But don't be alarmed, it's actually very simple and very easy to set up. So we'll start by setting up the first bar animation. We'll choose Effect, Expression Control, Slider Control. And the first slider is going to be for the value. So we could probably just change this to bar value. And this is going to be what we want this to represent. Now, this top value here, let me just rename this layer to be max value. And then we're going to create another layer to hold some of our other expression controls. So we'll create an adjustment layer, we'll shut it off, and we'll call this chart controls. And then we'll choose Effect, Expression Control, Slider Control, and we'll call this max value. Now, by the way, I'm just hitting return to rename. Right. And let's say we want the max value to be 400. And then we'll come back down to the bar, and we want to create one more slider control. So we'll choose Effect, Expression Control, Slider Control. Now this is going to be our animation percentage, and I'll explain that in a moment, but hit return, we'll call this percentage. Okay, so that's the basic setup. Now it is important that these names are case sensitive, and if I have a space, try to remember to have a space, because the expressions that we're going to be using are actually pre-prepared so that we don't have to be messing around and trying to figure that out. You don't want to watch me fumble around any more than I need to, since we're already beyond record fumbling around. So, you see this? I can't even tell the joke here. All right, so our first bar graph animation. I'm going to right click on it, or we'll come up here and we'll do it from the layer menu. We'll choose Time, Enable Time Remapping. This is where we're going to apply an expression. So, and then I want to alt click on the stopwatch. And here we can start putting in some expression information. Now, expressions are basically little references, to other values or to new values, and you can use simple math. For example, time remap, I could say, times 2, and basically all of the animation will be twice as fast. So in this case, it's completing its animation twice as fast as the other ones. So it's simple math, it's simple, setup, but instead of getting into that, I've actually created some expressions already, and what we're going to do is just go over them. And this will be in the project file when you download it, so you can follow along and use it in the future. So we're just going to select it all here, copy, click in here, and we're going to replace all of that, and we're going to paste it. So we didn't get any errors. That's good. Now before we get into that, let's link up a few of our number values. So basically this is just a quick way to see what we're doing. So we have the first 100 value here, and I want to link it to a value on the bar. So we'll go here, we'll hit E, toggle down the bar value, which we could set to say 100. And then we'll go to that first text, we'll toggle down, we'll go to the text first here, and we'll alt click on the source text. And then we're going to bring it over here and link it to the bar value of 100. And what that basically does is allows me to change the value, and it updates right inside of my video. So just like a quick simple way to link values and print them. Now we also want to do that for our max value. So in the chart controls, we've set that to 400. So if we go to our max value, we'll hit E, or we'll toggle down text, alt click on source text, bring that down. We'll alt click on the source text, pick whip the slider value of 400, and now our maximum value can be changed right here. So we'll set it to 500, and it updates. So that's the benefit, and we should start taking advantage of it. Now, coming down to the bar, we have the percentage. So right now it's set to 0. But if I animate this up to 100, our bar grows. Now the idea here is we want to create a way to actually animate the graph so it's not just static. And the percentage allows us to do that. So we'll go to the beginning, we'll click on the stopwatch, we'll move forward, 20 frames, 30 frames, whatever, and we'll set it to 100%. So from this point in time, it's going to go up. And if I just shut out these other bars for a moment, this is basically the complete setup. If I change the bar value, to 250, now it's 50% of the max value. I can turn it all the way up. It's basically all rigged and ready to go. All we need to do is copy the settings over to the other 3 bars, and we're all done. So let's quickly do that. We'll just take these 2 values. We'll choose Edit, Copy. We'll go to the beginning of the animation. Select number 2, paste it, number 3, paste it, number 4, and paste it. And then we also need to copy the expression. So if we select the time remap, we can choose Edit, Copy Expression Only. Select the other 3 layers and choose Edit, Paste. So now all of those others have all the settings, they have all of the sliders, we can turn them on, and then we can change their value. So if we move forward, let's play around with this. Set the second one to maybe 400, 450, and 500. And there you have it. Now we also need to link up the values of each of the text layers. We can do that just by going into the text and linking the source text up to the bar value, and that way number 2 links to number 2. So alt click, pick whip, and what I'll do is I'll just copy this expression that's created, go into the next one, alt click on the stop, paste it in there, and I know we need to change this to bar number 3 instead of bar number 2, and likewise we'll go in here, we'll change it from bar number 2 to bar number 4, and our animation should be dialed in. So 315, 400, 450, 500. And as I said before, we can just change the chart maximum value, and all of the graph animations will adjust accordingly. So it's really a cool, fast way to create these bar chart animations, and you can do it, change it, and they look good. Because the one thing I've learned is that doing these things can sometimes actually lead to bad news. So if the projections are low, or the year just didn't work out as well as we hoped, well, at least the bar graphs look good, and the boss will say, wow, that's really bad news, and I'm going to have to fire you, but dang it, those were some good looking graphs. And you pack your things and you take off. But this is the idea, and I hope this tutorial was useful and kind of eye-opening to what things might be possible. Now, for those who might be interested in setting this up without a 3D program, I basically did the exact same thing. We have a composition that has this bar animation. It's 100 frames long, and then what you do is you go into the time remap, you add your expression, you set up your values just the same, and you're good. And then when you're all done, you can just throw the animation back to the beginning so that you have it fade in, text fades in, maybe a little flash of a gold solid set to add, just to create a little dramatic effect, and you're in business. So, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and maybe you'll think of some other cool ideas and ways to use the technique. And if things are going good, business is good, you might think about checking out some of our Video Copilot gear. So if you go over to the products page we really do have some, cutting edge products and tools for doing motion graphics and compositing. So check them out. We've got Evolution and Riot Gear, great tools for compositing, and Twitch, which is a very fun plugin, and as well as some music and some sound effects products. So if you're looking for a way to spice up your output or whatever, check out our products. We put a lot of work into them, and hopefully that will help you out. My name is Andrew Kramer, and we'll see you next time.